Hello, I'm Macy Man, and I wanted to create a tier list on all the killers in Dead by Daylight and how I personally feel they are based on the difficulty that they are when played. So this is not a tier list of how good or bad I think they are in the sense of wins and losses. This is just purely on you are starting Dead by Daylight and you look at all these killers and you think, okay, who's a good killer to learn first, kind of get the understandings of the game, and who should I possibly leave for a little bit later in the sense of skill. So I'm just gonna go through all the killers and just talk about kind of their powers and how I personally feel they are in the sense of understanding how they work and can you actually get kills as a new player versus they got a lot of shit going on and I should hold off on them. All right. So we're gonna start out with the Trapper, who I actually personally do not play that much. I maybe have played, I'm gonna say one game out of like my 80 hours, almost 90 hours of total playtime. I'd maybe played Trapper once or twice, um, but he's a very basic. I mean, they like to say a M1 killer, someone who just walks around and hits people with their weapon, and that's that. M1 killer, mouse one. His basic power is he lays down traps, and if a survivor walks over the trap, they get stuck for a couple seconds. You will get alerted, and that's pretty much it. Very, very basic M1 killer. But for S tier, we're gonna be doing easiest. D tier is hardest. So just to letting you know, this is not good or bad. This is just how I personally feel they are to play. For Trapper specifically, I would say he's an S in the sense of he is pretty damn easy. I mean, that's sort of maybe part of why I don't personally like to play him is because he just has a very basic kit. You lay down a trap, you walk around the map, and you hit people with your left mouse button, and that's pretty much it. But very good as a newbie, very good. Next one is going to be Wraith, who I also feel like is a pretty easy killer. Again, pretty much just an M1 killer. You go around, you walk around, and you hit someone with your weapon, and that's that. His power is he can turn invisible by clicking on his bell, so you are invisible during the game, but you have to uncloak yourself in order to actually get a hit. So that there is a sense of a little bit of a skill where you can't just walk up to someone invisible and hit them. You do need to actually strategically think, okay, how am I going to uncloak myself, during that 3-second animation to then still be in melee range. But still, he's a pretty simple character. Really, all you want to do is just kind of corner them, or for instance, a really good thing to do is when a survivor is running away is to run towards them, then get in front of them, uncloak yourself, and kind of body block them, and then you go for the hit. Pretty simple. So I'm gonna say he's also an S tier in sense of he's pretty easy, like the Trapper, just an M1 killer, but he does have that little bit of extra like power that you have to think about. But compared to a lot of these other killers, they're pretty simple. Next one is Hillbilly, and let me not drag him in. Let me talk for a second. So his power is he has a chainsaw. There's two killers in this game that have chainsaws: Hillbilly and the Cannibal. The Hillbilly's chainsaw is one that you charge up, and then you dash forward. You run really fast forward, which sounds kind of great, right? Oh, big open map. You run forward at light speed, going much faster than the survivors. Surely I can get kills with them. And if you do manage to hit a survivor when they are fully healed with your chainsaw, you instantly down them, which is really powerful. But I'm going to say from personal experience for the past, and I also do not play him that much because I personally feel like he is actually insanely hard. He is, in my opinion, one of the hardest killers. Again, pretty basic kit. You have a chainsaw, you charge it up, you run forward, but that's what's really hard is there's lots of obstacles in the maps. There are trees, there are rocks, there are pallets, there are corners, there are houses or shacks. And if you are playing an indoor map, which you might, I recently played a game as Hillbilly in the Raccoon City map, the Resident Evil map, and let me tell you, that made me literally want to go AFK and quit the game because I could not for the life of me understand how the hell to play this killer in an indoor map like that. So I got very frustrated and I said, I do not want to play this killer because he is very hard. Even though pretty basic kit, you are running so fast to the point where you hit one thing and you get stunned. So you really have to time it well where you're running for it. And honestly, what I personally think is you don't actually use the chainsaw to run a long distance to chase after a survivor. You really just get behind them, rev up your chainsaw, and then you go for the insta down. But while that might sound pretty simple, if the survivor does a nice little 90-degree turn, or they start doing a little run, going behind you, throwing down a pallet, and then you got your chainsaw, and it's just, to me personally, while he's has a very basic understanding of, oh, that's how you use this character, he is also very hard, because for the life of me I cannot figure out how to run in a straight line as well, or how to make turns. He's very difficult in learning how to maneuver when you're running with the chainsaw. So with that being said, I would put him in a D tier of one of the actual hardest killers. Next is Nurse. Nurse is my most played killer. She is the killer that I first learned when I first got into the game. And I know people like to say she's the hardest killer in the game. She's one of the hardest. I personally do not believe that or agree with that, but I will not sit here and say she's easy. She is she is moderately hard. Her kit is pretty simple. You can blink through the map, through objects, through walls, through what, like, and legitimately anything. You are clipping through the map, which might sound easy, but there is a recharge time. And if you unsuccessfully, if you're unable to hit someone after that blink, you get stunned, or you look at the ground and you are blindsided essentially, and you can't see anything for a couple of seconds. You get 2 blinks, so you can blink once, and then you can have that short little duration of blinking again, to attack someone. But if you do fail to hit someone, you are instantly stunned. While it might sound pretty simple that, oh, I can just go through the map wherever I want, you do have to strategically plan ahead, because you are not able to see how far you're going to blink without using an add-on. But if you do not have the add-on, then you just kind of have to go by muscle memory, and that's really all this killer is you know, for me, who has played many games as her, I feel more comfortable than I did when I first started out. It's just that muscle memory of, okay, if I hold it down for this long, I'm going to go this far. So with that, all that being said, I'm not going to say she's the hardest killer, but she's certainly not the easiest. I'm going to say she's C tier. She's there. Um, she's a little hard to understand at the get-go, but she is not the hardest or one of the hardest. Michael Myers, pretty basic M1 killer, just like Hillbilly and Wraith. You walk around with your knife, you can stalk people, and if you get to your tier 3, you can insta kill someone, not insta kill, insta down someone, and pretty simple. M1 killer. I'd say he's an S tier. I mean, not too much about his kit. He walks around stalking, and then he can hit someone with his knife. Hag, you place down little teleports on the floor, on the ground, which if someone walks over, it essentially jump scares them, it triggers a clone of yourself, but you get an alert and you can quickly teleport to that location. So honestly, pretty simple. You place down teleportations. You get, if I'm to my understanding, you get about 7 or 8. You can place them on the ground, and then you just go about your day walking around the map, and you essentially just wait for someone to trigger it to just instantly teleport and try to get for that hit. One thing I like to do that always seems to work is when you hook a survivor, is to just place one right near the hook, so you will get alerted when someone tries to unhook them. And I mean, honestly, you just teleport and you could easily get one of them down, or at least get a hit in one of them. Especially when you go for a basement, when you hook someone in a basement, you just place your teleports up and down the stairs. I mean, honestly, pretty easy. A little bit more strategic planning than these 3, but at the end of the day, it's a pretty simple killer. You place down, I mean, that's the thing, is you could teleport wherever. You do have to be in a certain range, but the teleportation is very quick. So once you teleport, you should be able to see the survivor within a very close range, where you might just have to do a little bit of a chase, and then you can hit them. Doctor, I have actually never played. I have never tried Doctor, so I cannot rate him. Huntress. For the Huntress, I'm going to put her in, I'd say, the C tier. She is tricky. She is tricky. Pretty basic kit. You have a hatchet, and you throw the hatchet, and if you hit someone with the hatchet, you get a hit. So you don't actually need to be in melee range to get a hit. But you don't get a lot of hatchets, and there is a bit of a slow wind up, and there's a bit of a slow speed of when throwing, and there's all about timing and trying to time the hatchet throw to where they're gonna run. When survivors try to loop you, you can't do anything with your hatchets, right? You could try throwing them, but a lot of these objects in this map with the rocks and what the trees, I mean, there's so many times I throw a hatchet and it just hits an object when I really thought it would hit the survivor. So you just have to deal with the hitboxes, and I've just not had a lot of good luck with her. So I definitely believe that she is tricky. Cannibal, again, like the hillbilly, has a chainsaw, but instead of running forward, you just sort of swing left to right with it, which you can also insta down someone with. Honestly, not that tricky. You know, a lot more simple than the hillbilly. I'm gonna put him in B tier. He's not insanely hard, but again, I have not played him that much. But at the end of the day, pretty basic M1 killer. He's a little tricky in the sense where you do slow down when you start swinging your chainsaw, but not as tricky in the sense where you run at super fast speeds. The Nightmare, I'm gonna give an A tier. He's pretty simple. You place down, kind of like the Hag, you place down a teleportation. Sorry, not a teleportation. You place down essentially a trigger alert where if someone runs over it, it triggers them. You get an alert. You cannot teleport to them, but you can teleport to generators. So you could teleport to generators, and that's sort of in the sense of how you can get across the map. But there is a bit of a slow wind-up speed for the teleportation, not as quick as the Hag. But at the end of the day, pretty simple. You just drop down a bunch of little alerts. You go around the map, someone alerts it. Maybe you find the closest generator, or you start heading that direction, and you might get lucky and try to get someone. I've not tried the pig. I do not own her. The clown, I would honestly say, is a B tier. He has 2 potions, one that lets you speed up and one that slows down the survivor. There is a bit of a wind-up time with the potions, so you do have to have some sort of strategic planning of which potion am I going to use. Am I going to try to speed up and catch up to them, or am I going to try to slow them down? And you do have to recharge your potions as well, so you can't just kind of all nilly-willy throw them all down. You do have to recharge them. So there is some strategic planning, but it is not a very difficult killer. I mean, at the end of the day, his kit is, again, pretty simple. You get 2 potions, slow down, speed up, and then you just go for that attack. There is some sort of skill in the sense where, you know, if a survivor's pretty far, you could try to go for that trick shot, throw the purple potion, have it hit them, or they walk into it, and then it slows them down. Or maybe you're doing a loop, going around a pallet, you throw down a purple potion, kind of stops their tracks, you're able to maybe do a double back, get them. But again, not super hard, but not super easy. Spirit, I would say, is an A tier. Sorry, oops, my bad. She is a C tier. Again, she's tricky. You essentially walk around the map, and you can turn invisible and have your character, the spirit, stand still, like a copy of yourself. And then you go invisible, and you can stalk survivors, but you cannot see the survivors. So you cannot see them, they cannot see you. So what you have to rely on is sound. You have to rely on hearing footsteps, hearing grass get crunched on, little cues to kind of help you determine where they might be, and then you go for the hit. So she is definitely take some time to really get to understand her, because again, you can't see them, so you're kind of really relying on a different sense, your hearing versus your sight. Legion, I'm gonna say, is, I mean, I love Legion. He's super fun, but also part of that is because he's pretty damn simple. Essentially, you can run really fast, and if you hit an enemy, you can then hear a heartbeat from across the map. Or sorry, let me rephrase that. If you hit someone after chasing after them, it resets the cooldown of your chase, and if you're within range of another survivor, it shows a heartbeat and a little symbol to identify where they are. Essentially, you can just run to that heartbeat, you can track it, it literally shows you where they are, and you can go for another hit. You cannot hit them a second time with your ability, so it's actually better to just go from the other to the other. Don't focus on just one survivor. But at the end of the day, he's an M1 killer, but he can go pretty fast, and he's a pretty simple character that I'm gonna give an S tier. He's pretty damn simple. Plague, I'm gonna say A. I mean, again, she's not an M1 killer. She does have an ability, her vomit. She has 2 different vomits. She can have a green vomit that lets her essentially just blind survivors, make them very dazed and confused. And then she has a different vomit, the red one, that actually lets her hurt survivors, right? You can actually attack someone, like a range. There's a bit of a wind up to the vomit, but it's a pretty far range, and honestly, if someone drops a pellet, that's fine. You could just shoot your vomit in sort of their direction and hit them. Pretty simple at the end of the day. Ghostface, honestly, he has some skill, but again, he is an M1 killer. His sort of neat trick is that he can crouch, which him and the pig are the only killers that can do so. And you can crouch, and you don't have an aura. You don't have that red aura that shows to the enemies. So you can essentially creep up behind a survivor. They won't know. You stalk them, you build up a bar, and if you're able to fully stalk them, then it signals the survivor. But if you are able to catch up to them and hit them, it's an insta down. So I'm not going to say he's the easiest, but I'm going to say he's like, I'm going to say he's a... Shit, what just happened? Okay, I'm going to say he's a B tier, honestly. There's some skill to him. There are. You do have to be sneaky. You have to creep up on the survivors, find good angles. But if essentially you can peek around a corner, but if they spot you, then it reveals your aura. So you actually have to be sneaky and not be seen, but while able to see them. So that's sort of where the skill is. I do not own Demogorgon. The Omni, I'd say he's C. He's tricky. He's tricky. Did I say Omni? Maybe I meant the Ori. Or Ani. Yes, Ani. Yeah, Ani. Anyways, I'm gonna say he's pretty tricky. He is an M1 killer, but when you hit a survivor, they drop little blood orbs, and you can kind of track where they're going from the blood orbs. You can inhale or digest those blood orbs, and then you have the second power that lets you go in rage, and you have this big ass insta down weapon that you can break pallets with, you can break doors with instant. You hit a survivor, they instantly go down, but you also have a charge, and this is kind of similar to the Hillbilly, where you go at very fast speeds, and you're this big dude, and if a survivor makes a 90-degree turn, well, you're kind of screwed. And you're a big dude, so it takes up a big part of your screen. So he's just tricky in the sense where, in my opinion, characters that are fast are hard, except for Legion. So he's tricky. Deathslinger, I'm gonna say, is also C tier. He has a gun. You shoot a harpoon gun. It's not like a gun in the sense where when you shoot it instantly hits, like an FPS kind of bullet. There is a bit of an art, like a wind up when you shoot it. It does shoot a harpoon. It takes maybe a second for them to reach, so you do have to go in the sense that you have to aim the gun. If you do eventually hit someone with your gun, you can reel them in, but the survivor is going to try to counter it. So you're essentially going fishing. You hook someone, the fish is going to try to swarm left, right, left, right. You have to counter that, and you have to drag them in towards you so you can actually go for the hit. Um, he's tricky. I'm going to say he's tricky because if you miss your shot, you have to reload your gun. So you only get one shot every reload. Pyramid Head, I'm going to say B. His weapon, you can place it in the ground, and then you're a little immobile, but if you release, it shoots out a little bit of like a web on the floor. Not a big range, but a far enough range where if a survivor is not right in your face, you can still hit them. The only problem is that you are kind of immobile, and you really have to time it, in the sense where when you let go, you have to time it in the sense where because again, it's not an insta hit. It does kind of travel from you to the survivor, so you kind of have to time in the sense where if a survivor is running from left to right, I'm gonna place my sword on the ground, release, let it shoot out a little, and hope that it times well with the survivor. Blight, I mean, dude, this dude is just, I don't understand this dude. I really don't. This dude is just on a whole nother level of difficulty. His power is you charge up, you go very fast, and you essentially, so let's say there's a survivor far away, and I see him with my eyes. I can run towards him, but I can't attack him. You have to bump into an object to then get your second charge, and then with your second dash or charge, you can then actually hit a survivor. So the trick is you cannot hit them on the first charge. You have to first hit an object, and there is a bit of a cooldown when you do your dash, but in order to reset the cooldown, you have to hit an object. So if, let's say, a survivor is running away from me and then they make a 90-degree angle, I have to run at a tree, let's say, turn around, and then run towards them. But if they make another angle, I gotta hit another object, turn, and it's like you have to bounce off walls to reach the survivor. You don't just use the control keys and move around at fast speed. And he goes super fast. He goes very, very fast. And especially like in an indoor map, right? Like these two indoor maps are not your friend. Very hard. But also, outdoor maps are a little tricky because you need objects, and sometimes there's a big open field and there's just nothing to bump into. Twins, I'm gonna say, are B tier. Essentially, you're like two characters. You have two characters. One is the lady, which I don't know her name, and the other is Victor, the little baby. And essentially, what happens is you kind of similar to the spirit, where you can stand still and do nothing, and you can control another character. And you control Victor, who's this little baby, very tiny baby that can run around and chase survivors. So you're chasing the survivors as this little baby, and you can charge up a wind up, which then jumps at the survivor and latches onto them. If you are managed to wind up your charge and latch onto them, you then quickly transform back into the lady, and you can now see Victor, the little baby, on the survivor running around. So you can see the survivor's aura through the map running around. But if you are unable to actually latch onto a survivor, there is a bit of a little cooldown, a little reset. And what happens is the survivor can turn around and attack Victor. They can attack the baby, essentially kicking it. And if they kick the baby, then there's a cooldown where you go back to the lady, and there's a cooldown of getting Victor back. So the key is to walk around a map, stand still, transform into Victor, and then run around the map as a little baby and have to launch your attack onto a survivor. But it's a pretty long wind up, so you really have to get good at timing your winds up. But she's not super difficult in the sense where once you really learn how to just get your windups, you latch onto an enemy. Once you're latching onto an enemy every time, essentially you could just see where they are. You walk towards them, you attack them. That's that. Pretty simple in that sense, but there is that little difficulty where you're playing as a character that's very small, so the map also looks very different to you, and you do have a very long windup. Next one is Trickster. I really like playing Trickster. Similar to the Huntress, where you have these knives. Well, you have a weapon that you can throw at an enemy, but he has a lot more weapons than the Huntress does, and they shoot a lot faster. So you can just do a rapid spam. You then have to go in a locker similar to Huntress and recharge. But I'm gonna say he's honestly, I'm gonna say he's an S tier. Very easy. uh, he's just a fun killer, and I get it. You just kind of turn your brain off as him. You get like 45 knives, and I don't know the exact number, but I think if you just attach like 8 of them onto a survivor, it hurts them, it damages them, and then if you attach another 8 to them, it downs them. So you don't ever actually need to use your M1 weapon. Pretty simple. He shoots the knives very fast too. So if you see a survivor out in the open, I mean shit, just go ahead and spam that shit, and you just land a bunch of. Now there is a little bit of a let's say a trajectory, so you can't like with the Huntress, you can't essentially just have the knife directly on the survivor, and then when you click the button to throw, it attaches to them like an FPS gun. There is a bit of a timing where you have to you have to shoot a little ahead, but it's not that difficult because you have so many knives, and you throw them so fast that once you you're gonna miss the first couple, but then you'll just be in that nice groove where you're just throwing them in the direction that they're running, and if they change directions, you just change directions too. I do not own the Nemesis. Pinhead, I'm gonna say he is a. I'm gonna say he is. He's a C tier. He's tricky. Um, he's got an ability where you can, if you get alerted of the survivors opening your box, you can instantly teleport to it, which is neat. You can teleport like literally across the whole map. But you have these chains that you can. I'm trying to explain it in a better way. You can send out a little teleportation spirit, but not a teleportation in the sense of your character. Think of it like the nurse almost, where you could send out a little spirit, let's say, and you can look through the spirit, which kind of gives you an insight of where the survivors are. So let's say you're chasing a survivor and they turn a corner. I can throw my spirit and look through the lens of that spirit and see a survivor. I then have to shoot out a hook, a little bit of like a hook essentially. You shoot out a hook that kind of goes slow, but if you are able to hook onto the survivor, you then go back into Pinhead, kind of similar to like Victor in the Twins, where you shoot out a different thing, you then have to attach to them, and then if you do manage to attach to them, you transform back into the killer. And when they are hooked by the chains, they are slowed down. Think of it like they're in tar. They are kind of slowed down, and they have to. There's a bit of like a couple seconds, 3 to 5 seconds, where they are slowed down, where you can go to them and attach and attack them. And it's fairly simple. If the survivor's close to you and you're able to hook them, you can most of the time get a attack in. The only tricky part is that hook that you have to actually attach to them, and the hook goes pretty damn fast, and you kind of control the hook, but not in the sense where if the survivor's super far away, you can start magically going through left to right, turning corners. Like, no, it goes pretty fast in a straight direction. But he's not like insanely difficult, but he's not also super easy, because you do have to rely on throwing that hook at a survivor and timing it in the sense where you do want to be really close to them. That's why sometimes it's good to just chase a survivor and then say, you know what, fuck it, I'm gonna just show out my spirit, attach to you right then and there, like when they're really close to you. But yeah, that's my tier list. This isn't in a specific order. Besides Blight, I mean, dude, that dude is just so fucking hard. I can't. And Hillbilly, I mean, I don't even understand these characters. They drive me fucking mad. But in the sense of easiest, just to put one, I'm gonna say like the easiest killer is. I mean, Trapper is just such a you put a trap down, that's it, you're done, GG. You hope they walk over it. The only really like thing you're thinking about is placing the trap. But I'm gonna say the easiest killer. My God, I might even say Legion. I mean, Michael possibly, because Michael, I mean, all you do is just walk around and stab people. You just charge up an ability, and then you stab people. It's that easy. There's no real like thinking. You don't. It's not like Ghostface where you have to stay hidden in the shadows. You can really just walk up to a survivor and hold down your ability to charge up your tiers, and then you just go for the hit. So I'm gonna say he's the easiest killer. Hardest, easiest. All right. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day.